This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
An historic home in the Northern Midlands has gone up in flames, destroying the inside and causing $500,000 damage. The Tasmania Fire Service labelling the blaze a very unfortunate situation.
An historic Campbelltown home up in flames, fire ripping through everything inside as smoke billowed from the chimney and roof.
All I'd like to say on behalf of the family is that it's a very unfortunate situation.
Around 20 firefighters battled the blaze, which was first reported at midday. The fire so intense it caused the roof to collapse. Rocks even had to be thrown through windows to help crews get water onto the flames.
There appears to have been a belief that the fire has started in a chimney space, which has then got into the roof. There may be further investigation tomorrow by a fire service.
It took crews 2.5 hours to bring the fire under control. No one was inside at the time, but the home is usually occupied. Firefighters were able to save surrounding outbuildings, many which are listed on the register of the National Estate. The now gutted home was built in the 1860s and damage has been estimated at $500,000. What will happen now with the structure is for the landowners to decide.
It is to be determined what they will do.
Monica Dadson at Southern Cross News.
An outbreak of norovirus has hit the Royal Hobart Hospital's paediatric ward. The highly infectious virus is affecting staff and patients, but a hospital spokeswoman says authorities are doing what they can to stop its spread. Louise Hedger has more.
The outbreak started yesterday and because it is highly infectious, has spread rapidly to staff and patients. It's been confirmed 9 children from the paediatric ward and 6 staff have picked up the virus, which is said to cause severe vomiting and diarrhoea.
It's limited to the paediatric ward at the moment. There's no evidence of any other gastro-like illness within the hospital affecting any of the other wards.
The ward is still accepting patients, but visitors are restricted and some children are being isolated in an attempt to stop the spread of infection.
We have established processes in place to manage outbreaks as they occur. Viral gastroenteritis is not an uncommon problem for hospitals. We manage probably one a year.
The virus is said to affect patients for between 48 and 72 hours. The next 24 hours will be crucial to tell whether transmission of the virus has been limited within the ward. But at this stage, staff say they are confident it will soon be under control and are urging the public to still attend the hospital if there's an emergency.
2 Launceston residents accused of playing a role in the suspected murder of Tyson Clark Robertson have fronted court. 19-year-old Renee Lorraine Donald and 53-year-old Robert William Broad appearing in the Launceston Magistrates Court this morning.
Renee Donald out on bail, charged with being an accessory after the fact of murder. The 19-year-old is still yet to enter a plea to the charge. Instead, she's requested an adjournment to enter it late next month. Miss Donald is one of 3 people charged in relation to Tyson Clark Robertson's alleged murder. The 24-year-old was reported missing earlier this year after not being seen since last July. Police swarmed on a property in Mayfield in April and say detectives found the body of Mr. Clark Robertson buried in the backyard in a shallow grave. The house was later that week burnt down. Today, 53-year-old Mayfield man Robert William Broad also fronted court. He's been charged with failing to report the killing of a person, but has pleaded not guilty. Renee Donald will next appear here in the Launceston Magistrates Court on July 20. Mr. Broad's case will now go to the Supreme Court. He's been bailed to appear there in September. And as for the man accused of murdering Mr. Clark Robertson, Ian Rosewell remains behind bars. He has also pleaded not guilty and will front the Supreme Court late next month. Monica Dadson at Southern Cross News.
Human Services Minister Jackie Petrusma has faced a barrage of questions over the government's use of foster care provider Safe Pathways. 11 children were removed from the organisation in December after allegations were raised about its ability to provide adequate support.
It's been 6 months since the Human Services Minister ordered the removal of children from the for-profit provider, and an investigation into its performance soon followed. The government says it still has a contract with Safe Pathways pending the outcome of an investigation, but no children are in its care.
You acknowledge it was a failure of your own under-resourced agency to properly monitor those at-risk children and to make sure that they were safe.
It has been this government that has actually put in place a robust contract management process of providers.
Labor and the Greens pressed the minister on the monetary cost paid to Safe Pathways for each child, with some estimating it's as high as $9,000 per week. The minister was remaining tight-lipped. Both parties were also alleging the minister's office is interfering in right to information requests to prevent bad news from becoming public.
Can then you explain why your office plays such an active and obvious hands-on role in right to information requests?
Mrs Petrusma denying any involvement, supported by her departmental secretary.
I've never had any contact from the Minister's office in relation to the decision, the content of a decision, or making a decision one way or the other.
Budget estimates hearings conclude tomorrow. Andrew McCarthy, Southern Cross News.
Police Minister Reen Hidding has thrown the state government's support behind the Prime Minister after Malcolm Turnbull called for a crackdown on parole decisions in the wake of the Melbourne terror attack. Mr Hidding says police officers have expressed to him their frustration when hardened Tasmanian criminals re-offend after an early release.
The community rightfully expects parole to be granted only when there is no risk to the community. Parole should not be a right, and there should not be an expectation, and there should be an expectation against early release for anyone considered dangerous or having a history of dangerous behaviour.
The parole laws will be discussed at the Council of Australian Governments meeting in Hobart on Friday. New legislation is being considered about whether Tasmanian law should criminalise all forms of assault, including those undertaken with consent, like a fist fight in resolving disagreements. A report released from the Tasmanian Law Reform Institute today considers whether the current law should be upgraded to reflect contemporary views.
Whether someone can actually run consent in terms of an assault scenario is also a major issue. It's a matter that crops up time and time again, and it's always problematic every time we have to deal with it.
The paper says the current law is outdated and can be confusing for judges and juries in making determinations. South Korea's ambassador has made a special trip to Tasmania to honour our war veterans. He thanked them and their families for helping to protect his home country.
South Korea's ambassador shaking the hands of one of the men he calls a hero, handing out 6 peace medals today at the South Arm RSL, honouring veterans who fought in the Korean War.
Korea would not be what it is today without the Korean war veterans from all United Nations members, including Australia.
The conflict broke out in June 1950. Within days, Australia signed up to the mission to help repel advancing communist forces from the north. Alf Blowers was just 22 years old when he joined the cause.
The people of Korea needed help at that time, and we were able to offer that help.
South Korea's most senior representative in Australia also presenting medals to families of veterans who have since died. Joanne Maxwell accepting a posthumous honour for her father Ronald, who served 2.5 years in the war.
He absolutely loved the Navy, but as I said, he went through a lot of, hell over there. So he came back, I'd say, a broken man.
Fighting on the Korean peninsula died down with an armistice signed in July 1953. This paused the conflict, but to this day the war hasn't officially ended.
Technically speaking, 2 Koreas are still at war because we didn't sign any peace agreement yet.
The War Memorial says 340 Australians were killed and 1,216 wounded in the Korean War. Michael Breen, Southern Cross News.
Hobart is gearing up for party mode with this year's annual winter festival, Dark Mofo. Hundreds of thousands are expected to attend the quirky, interesting and confronting events over the next fortnight. And in true Mona style, visitors are told to expect the unexpected.
A fittingly unusual art installation set up to rouse those in Hobart from their sleep and to get them in the mood for Dark Mofo. These speakers, all 450 of them, positioned on top of 6 buildings on the waterfront. They'll sound for 7 minutes with female voices at dawn and dusk over the next 10 days.
With this work, it really came from this sense of if we could make this really large sound and you could stand inside this sound that seems to be coming from everywhere, like what would that experience be like?
It really reacts to the buildings, the water, the time of day, working with the other ambient noise in the city to create this kind of very spacious piece of sound that sits in the sky.
As the sun sets, a helicopter strapped with a tsunami alert public address system will circle the port of Hobart.
Parts of it where the helicopter is speaking to the city and the city is calling back.
The annual Winter Solstice Festival, now in its 5th year, is expected to attract more than 300,000 people to 67 events over the next 2 weeks. Hotel operators saying they welcome the tourist numbers in what would usually be a quiet time.
It's probably 20-30% busier than we used to be. It's not just accommodation that's benefiting, but a lot of the industry are finding ways to capitalise on these winter events.
Winter Feast and Dark Park will kick off on Friday night. The festival runs until the 21st of June. Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
Exciting times for primary school students today, with 22-time Grand Slam champion Todd Woodbridge visiting their schools and delivering brand new tennis rackets to hone their skills. The tennis great is hosting tennis clinics around the state as part of a nationwide tour to introduce younger children to the sport.
Every skill level can start here and then improve. So that's why this program's working, because it's not about being a champion straight away. It's about just starting and getting involved in sport.
80,000 rackets will be delivered to students in 2,000 schools across the country. Tasmania's Aboriginal community is banding behind a new policy known as the Uluru Statement, which aims to overhaul Indigenous recognition. Local delegates are now preparing to lobby the federal government to introduce a raft of changes, but not all parties are convinced of the plan.
Political representation is at the heart of this meeting today, discussing a new plan to amplify Aboriginal voices.
The Aboriginal community here needs to know how the Uluru policy can work out in practical terms for Tasmania.
The proposal asks for a new Senate position in Tasmania to be reserved for Aboriginals, plus a new Indigenous body to fill the void since the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission was scrapped in 2004.
If the Prime Minister is able to exert his influence and lead his party, I think in the next couple of years we can have a treaty.
The federal government has expressed scepticism. Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce is on the record saying it asks for too much. But advocates insist the government doesn't fully understand the proposal.
We're not trying to upend Australia.
Tasmanian politicians are open to discussion.
We shouldn't be saying, yes, you've told us something, we're going to ignore it.
I'm not sure that some of the proposals that have been floated will necessarily achieve that, but that being said, let's wait to see what the final report has in store, and we'll see what the government response is.
The Referendum Council will make recommendations to Parliament later this month. In the meantime, local delegates will travel to Canberra to discuss the proposal with the Prime Minister. Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
Well, now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The share market has closed steady as gains in the financial and healthcare sectors offset falls by the supermarket giants and some miners. The ASX 200 index has dropped by 0.3 points. Short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 75.37 US cents and 66.89 euro cents. Star basketballer Lauren Mansfield says an upcoming training camp with the Australian Opal squad will be the pinnacle of her career so far. The Launceston Tornadoes captain is vying for national selection ahead of the Asian Cup qualifiers next month.
A standout 2017 sees Lauren Mansfield bound for Phoenix in the United States.
I'll be going up against, the best players in Australia.
The week-long training camp could end with Mansfield pulling on national colours at a senior level for the first time. She nearly made the final team last year, but an untimely ankle injury relegated her to courtside.
I always wanted to play for Australia. I remember watching the Olympics when I was younger, and that was always something I wanted to do.
Mansfield is averaging 18 points per game this season. She will miss at least 2 matches for the Tornadoes while the camp is on. But the club still has space for a new recruit.
And that's about finishing off our squad, not just about saying someone's going off to achieve an opportunity, so therefore we need to bring someone in.
The Torn's top massage therapist also gets a Guernsey at the camp.
I'm studying hard at the moment, so I'm fully prepared for when I get there.
Meanwhile, the Hobart Chargers can barely hide disappointment after the women's team gifted Ballarat its first win of the season.
We're really disappointed that we let that one slip, but I guess we're still punching on, and we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater just yet.
A different story for the men's team, which is now tagged title favourites.
I think the most we've lost by is 3 points so far. We've had 3 games under 3 points.
Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
To local football now, and Tasmania has made 2 changes to its representative squad after Dylan Riley was ruled out through injury and Thor Boskett was suspended. North Launceston ruckman Alex Lee now gets his chance against the Neefle alongside Glenorchy on-baller Reece Mott. Braden Webb has been given the honour of captaining the side for the first time.
Neefle are representing more of a league of different states and, I suppose, territories. Whereas we don't see it as we're representing TSL, but we see it more as representing Tasmania as a whole.
Play gets underway at Blunston Arena from 2 p.m. on Saturday.
Good evening. Hobart and Devonport 12 today. Launceston and Burnie both reached 13 degrees after a fairly cold start around the state. Temperatures did hover around average today though. Eddystone Point reaching 15 degrees to be our high, while Lyowini shivered last night with a -5. St Helens, Friendly Beaches and Bridport 14, Lowhead, Wynyard, Scottsdale, Campania and the Islands all 13 degrees. Grove, Cressy, Bushy Park and Lyowini 12, and Strawn 6 overnight, a top of 11 this afternoon. There is low-level cloud that's over the eastern bight and our region. Further west, a frontal band is starting to cross the bight, and also a low off New South Wales has produced thundercloud there. Some low-level cloud crept over us today, but mainly fine and clear over the east and central highlands. Tomorrow's chart shows a high moving in behind the cold front that's approaching Tasmania. However, it is weakening as it draws nearer, and there's not much else on the map. Winds west-northwest, they'll increase to 20 to 30 knots over the southwest of the state, up to 25 knots over the west coast, with lighter winds inland, swells to 3 metres in western and southern waters. One warning, a strong wind warning, that's for waters between Southeast Cape and Low Rocky Point. Into tomorrow we go. 4 overnight for Hobart, partly cloudy tomorrow and 14 degrees. Cygnet, bit of cloud about 13, and 13 the top also for New Norfolk. Launceston, bit of cloud, 2 overnight, 14 tomorrow, 14 with a possible late shower. Devonport, Campbelltown partly cloudy, 1 overnight, a top of 12 tomorrow afternoon. For Burnie, a possible shower developing, 14 the high, a bit of rain over the west, a shower for Strawn and Smithton, 13 and 14 degrees. And for the eastern areas, 16 and sunny for St Helens, Swansea okay and 15 degrees. Fog for Fingal, then a mostly sunny 14 later. On Friday morning, frost and fog with a shower over the west and far south. Another frosty start to Saturday and another shower over the west and far south. Those showers extending to the Bass Strait Islands on Sunday with just a slight chance of a shower over the central and north. A sunny day in Perth tomorrow along with Brisbane, Cairns and the Territory. Some cloud cover over Adelaide and Canberra and a shower or 2 for Melbourne and Sydney. And current conditions, crisp and clear. Hobart 6 degrees, Launceston 5 at the moment. Bit of cloud over Devonport and currently 9 degrees. A cool one tomorrow, Joe, and fine apart from the west coast for the next 3 days, including the weekend.
All right, thank you very much for that, Murph. That's all from the news team for now. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you a bit later with updates. Bye for now.